What's up, YouTube? So, you want some cool IR night vision lighting, huh? But you don't want to spend $2 grand plus for one of these things. Yeah, me neither. So today, we're going to be talking about the Somogear PEQ15 Airsoft Ultra High Power IR Laser Aiming Device Illuminator. And this thing comes in at a whopping 250 bucks. Is it worth it? Is it legit? Or is it a piece of shit? We're going to tear open the guts of this thing, do some upgrades, and then torture test it for a bit just to see if it'll hold up and hold zero. Stay tuned, motherfuckers! So maybe you've heard about the hype, or maybe you never even heard of these things at all. But this is the Somogear PEQ15, and really I'd say it's really more closer to the LA5 with the ultra high power features, which this one does have. Now, it's almost funny how they market these things, right? Because this is an airsoft item, right? It's not marketed, it's not sold as, legit military grade hardware to be used with a real firearm. But for those that have figured it out over the last year or so, these dudes out of Hong Kong basically market it that way as an airsoft product to basically loophole the FDA guidelines on lasers and other infrared devices out there. So yeah, 250 bucks gets you one of these. So if you have heard of these guys, you're probably asking, where the fuck did you get this thing? They're always back ordered. Every time I go to the website, can't find it. Well, I suggest going to Paragon Armory. And they're not paying me to say this. A friend told me, and now I'm telling you guys. So these dudes come in a couple different flavors. You can get a case in either black or tan. You can get a green or red dot. And as you can see, mine's already been marked accordingly. So let's do our little unboxing, shall we? Open this guy up. So this one has the PCB, the printed circuit board, potted, which means that some of the connections have probably been reinforced with some type of epoxy. Ooh, just letting you know, it's an airsoft toy. And here she is. Little green sticker there to let us know that this is a green laser version. Ultra high power. So it doesn't have real diffuser caps, they're just like blackout caps, and overall the construction doesn't feel too bad on this thing. Clicks aren't too bad. This one's a little softer, and as far as the selector switch, that feels pretty good. And I know it's kind of hit and miss with these things. It's got a little bottle cap kind of button there, you can hear it. And I haven't fucked with any of the IR0 screws over here. But overall, I mean, it seems pretty well built for the price. Now, I have used a real LA5, but that was like 13 fucking years ago, okay? So, as far as I can tell, aesthetically, it looks pretty much the same. I do remember that these little stop screws were in the same place. Obviously, it had real diffuser caps on it. The battery cover on it was a little different shaped, but otherwise, man, it's pretty damn similar. Probably on camera you can't really tell a huge difference. How solid is it? I don't know. We'll see. I'm squeezing pretty hard on this fucking thing right now, and I don't think it's gonna break, but we'll see. Anyways, back to some other goodies in this bag here. that might be for the little pressure switch. You include a little switch with it. A little pressure switch with their logo on there, which I've kind of heard mixed reviews about. But we're going to test this thing with some real deals too. Looks like I got some M-lock mounting hardware. That's probably what all this shit's for, is for that pressure switch. Ooh, that's nice. Has a little adjustment key for the laser 0. This one has a nice audible click. This one has none. Just kind of mushes. But you can still feel it click. That. Ooh, some stickers. Ooh, make it look official. And what else is in here? Instruction manual. Tells you how the whole thing works, huh? So you got all the different modes listed out. Does use a CR123 battery for airsoft use only. Alright, let's try this guy out here. Go ahead and do the battery cover. Got my 1-2 tree. Positive facing out. Looks like it works to me. Let's take out these little stop screws. And actually it looks like the bag with the M-lock hardware had a couple Allen keys in there, and just use the smaller one. Pull those guys out. And then we're going to put them right here. It's a little place to keep them stored. Alright, now that we've entered the cheat code, unlocked all the skills, ultra high power versus low power. So yeah, this thing is it's pretty fucking bright, that's for sure. I mean, just staring at that green dot is kind of giving me a spot in my eyeballs right now. But let's go outside and test this bad boy out, shall we? Alright guys, about 9 o'clock here in the good old state of Washington. Kind of an overcast day today. It was weird. Doesn't appear to be much clouds out right now, but it is still kind of gray. Wet, of course, because that's pretty typical for the Pacific Northwest. Let's see, you got a nice crescent moon out tonight. Oh, it kind of looks like the McDonald's moon face, dude. Haha. Dude. Now, if you can see that water tower in the background, that thing is about 300 yards away. And I've got my laser set to just the low power visible, right? And I can nail that motherfucker from here, man. No joke. If you can see it on camera, that's the low power. I'm just circling around right there in the water tower. Let me zoom in a little more so you can get a better view. Yeah, you can see that. Now that's the low power. Here's the high. I'm gonna try to set it right, but I can see the fucking laser beam. Like, I can actually see the line. I don't know if you guys can or not. I'll zoom out here in a second. The visible laser on this thing is fucking bonkers, man. If you can see that, I can't really see on the screen from here. And like I said, that's about 300 yards right there. I'll double check it with a rangefinder later, but yeah, you can really reach out and touch someone with this thing. Alright, we're back out here again. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. Alright, this is on the low power setting. I can see that beam clear as day, man. Change it to the high power. I mean, that thing is very visible tonight. A little closer. That one's probably about 150-ish. You can get about 300 at this distance. Alright, let's try out some of the IR capabilities here. You can see that. That's the low power laser. Yeah, that's about maybe 100, a little over 100 yards there. Way up. It's kind of hard to see with that freaking bloom of light on top of the tower there, but let's try the dual illuminator and laser. Trying to adjust the width of that IR light there. Really see it. It blooms out on camera. Alright, let's go to high power laser. Yeah, that guy's pretty bright there. You can even, yeah, you can see the beam. Pretty gnarly shit. Alright, let's reach out. 100. And you can see that laser being clear as day under these nods here. Let's try the IR. That's on the high power. Let's go with the dual ultra high power. It's pretty bright. So color me impressed. This thing's pretty baller for what you get for the money, for sure. Obviously the laser performance is pretty good. Illuminator performance is okay. I know on the video under night vision, a lot of the lighting just kind of blotches and whites out, so it's kind of hard to gauge. I assure you it's not that bright when you're wearing them. Maybe I'll just try to turn the gain down a little more when I'm recording next time. But anyways, yeah, this thing is pretty kick-ass so far. So, you know, to activate it, there is a button here, and this one's got a nice, you can hear it, nice positive click to it. You can double tap it to make it stay on. And I guess depending on when you may have purchased one of these, if you already own one, some of them, the buttons might be a little different on there. You may have more of a, like a mushy button with no type of click. But the engagement on my particular one here feels pretty nice, actually. So everything feels pretty good on it. So next we're going to test out a couple switches on this guy. So you can see on the back side here, there is a nice little rubber, presumably waterproof plug there. And we'll test it first with the Somogear switch that came with it. Feels okay. decent lock. Clearly works. Alright, that looks good to go. Alright, now we'll try a series of the L3 Insight switches here. First we'll use the single button style. It doesn't have as good of a lockup probably as, you know, the real LA5 does. But clearly works. Now we'll try the L3 Insight dual pressure switch. Try both of them here. Lockup's a little better on that one. And lastly, we'll go with my personal favorite, the tape switch. And I got this on a LaRue vertical grip. And you can call me a 90s operator or whatever, but I love vertical grips. I love this one the most, the LaRue with the quick detach on there. Not to mention that you can see that the sides of it are flat, just so that you can actually put a tape switch on there. And I don't have the Velcro on this one, except for what's on the switch itself. I just like having the two rubber bands there. As you can see, works very well. So good to go as far as the switches go. As I said, probably I don't think it has as good of a lockup as the real thing, but will that be an issue? I don't know, we'll see. So next, we're going to go ahead and open this guy up and see what's inside and what makes it tick, as well as do a couple little upgrades I've been reading about on the internet. Let's start tearing this thing apart. Alright, this dude is held together with 1, 2, 3 screws on the front and 2 screws on the bottom. And it might be kind of hard to see, but there is the shiny epoxy covering the actual screws themselves. And from what I understand, there's a couple ways to get through that. You can use a drill or an end mill bit. First things first, make sure to take the battery out. So don't fuck anything up there. Alright, we got this guy clamped into the table vise here. I got my drill with a 16th inch bit on there, and we're just going to drill a little pilot hole through these epoxied areas. Let's step up in bit size. Go to an 1/8 inch next. Alright, I got an 11/64 here, just a little bit smaller than a 3/16. So I was able to get these 2 lower ones out, but I got a little overzealous with the drill and ended up drilling out a little bit of the heads, too much on this one to where I can't get the Allen wrench to get a bite on there. What I should have been using was this 3/16 end mill bit instead, but I didn't because I didn't have one at the time, and now I'm paying the fucking price. But anyways, I'm gonna have to drill that screw out now, at least the head portion, and basically replace all those screws. So let's go. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my 11/64 bit here and just start drilling this screw head. Alright. chuck this end mill bit in there and hope I can. Okay, I got it apart, but because again I got overzealous with that freaking drill initially and I stripped out the head of that Allen bolt, I had to basically drill all the way through, and you can see the broken remainder of that Allen bolt, and I ended up reaming the shit out of this thing, which is what I was trying to avoid. So I'm gonna have to go back in here and either fill this with some JB weld or some plastic weld or something and come back to it. But for now, next step is to remove the remainder of that screw there, and hopefully just a pair of pliers will do it. There it is, cause of our heartache. So everything else still looks good. See, there's some nuts for those 3 screws there holding that all in, and then we've got the 2 on the bottom here. So this time I'm just going to use the end mill, go very slow, and hope we won't run into the same issues. Alright, I got those bastards loose. Had a lot of epoxy in there, so I had to use my pick and X-Acto knife after getting to the surface of the bolt head and then having to clean out that hex pocket in there. But I was able to do so, and as you can see, it does make a little bit of a mess, so I don't recommend this project on your kitchen table. Alright, come back to your 2mm Allen key. Get those guys out of there. There's your 2 screws from the bottom side, here and there. And you'll notice one is a little longer than the other, so just make note of that. The longer one came from the back end of the unit, the battery side. Set these aside here. Alright, this thing is still sealed together, these 2 halves. I think there's just like a light adhesive that runs along these seams here. So I'm just going to take my X-Acto, trace it, and see if it'll slowly separate. Alright, you can see it's starting to pry up just a little bit here. So I'm just going to take a small flathead and kind of wedge it in there and kind of work that crack a little. Okay, so there's actually 3 screws holding this case together, and of course I figured that out after I damn near broke this thing open. But of course you got to take this Picatinny mount off of here. So same deal, these are covered in epoxy, and then because I guess these Somogear motherfuckers have a sense of humor, now this one is actually a Phillips head. So again, be very, very careful that you do not strip out the top of the screw. And this time around what worked really well is that I took a 1/16 inch bit, drilled a center hole, and then went to an 11/64 bit, drilled that down, basically until I could see that it wasn't drilling plastic anymore. It was starting to have a tiny bit of metal shavings. Then I took the 3/16 end mill and drove it down in there, and that seems to work pretty good. So knowing what I know now, that's probably what I should have done to start with, not to mention realizing that Oh, hey, dumbass, there's actually 3, not 2 bolts holding this motherfucker together. So, oh, this has been a super fun project. Those guys are out. That pops right out of there. Nice. So now we've got that last epoxy hole. So, do it just like I said before. And again, do this first. So first thing I'm going to do, just kind of put a little bit of a little center punch right in there. Go with the 11/16. Step up to the 11/64. You don't have to get nuts like I did before. Again, remember, you don't want to fuck up the top of that screw. 3/16 end mill. And I don't know if you can see in there, but it looks to be also a Phillips head, but this is where I use my X-Acto. Just go in there and get any remnants of that epoxy out of there. Little pick works good as well. And there you go. There's your little screw on the bottom there. Okay, now this guy should hopefully come right apart. There we go. Oh, beautiful. Alright, let me clean up this workbench here and organize this shit. Alright, now that we got all the electronics exposed, I'm going to take the proper electronic precautions. So I got my proctologist mitts on and my static friendship bracelet here. So one of the issues I've heard about these things is that this positive battery lead it is soldered here to the PCB, but it's just loose. You can see that moving around. Yeah, see how that guy and it just sits in there. And pictures I've seen of older units, it looks like it may have been lightly soldered. The copper wire here does not appear to be as long and wrap around. So perhaps this is one of their fixes. Again, this is a newer unit here. You see you've got these 2 screws to mount the PCB to the housing, and this copper lead is very, very close to this screw. Now, is that a potential ground out issue? I'm not sure, but either way, it's still too close for comfort. So we'll improve upon that area, and as others on the internet have done, have taken this control board out and basically fully potted it, so to speak. So we'll probably be doing that as well and inspecting it. And I know that you can upgrade this Illuminator by shaving maybe like a 1/16 off the end of the inside of this unit here when we open that up too. So we'll check that out. So first things first, we'll take these 2 screws out. Looks like a 1.5 mil Allen key ought to do it. We've removed the screws for the PCB here. As you can see, that positive lead seems to wrap around. There we go. Pulls right out of there. And let's see. Flip this over. Let's see if we can't undo these guys here. There we go. Taking a little hook pick here, just kind of go back and forth on the sides. A little bit at a time. Start to loosen up. Hopefully there it goes. Alright, now we got this guy out of the way. Let's take a look at this board here. So you got the leads. These white wires go to the button. And these little wires, the little blue and the red, those are for the plug for your pressure switch. And then this little black ribbon cable in here that goes to the selector switch. I don't know, does that guy come out easy? So you'll see that the laser and the illuminator, they just kind of ride in there. They're not super tight. Obviously there's some wiggle room. Our next thing we want to do, let's open this guy up. And we've got some really tiny Phillips head screws. Looks like 3 of them there, holding them in, and then we'll pull this whole illuminator apart here and see what's going on with it. Let me see, I guess cap to come off here too. But so we're going to pull this apart. That was pretty simple. Go. Okay, so here's the Somogear unit with all the parts laid out. So I've got battery cover, laser cover, your IR illuminator, lens, and cover, the visible and IR laser, which are supposed to be slave to one another. As you can see, they are both in this case here, hooked up to this little machine piece, which is how you adjust your zero. Here is the bottom of the cover, spring-loaded pieces there. Those guys look to be molded. Nope, there's actually little Phillips head screws that hold those guys in, and those are spring-loaded again for the zero, the little zeroing modules there. And we've got this guy here, the PCB, that's the printed control board. And looking at photos of some of the other ones I've seen online, mine's a little different, and that might just be because it's a newer-ish one. Again, I just got this a couple weeks ago. First off, the button here, it's an independent unit that's wired to the board, as you can see, with these 2 white wires. Other ones I've seen, it looks like there might be like a little push button type deal. So when you push that rubber button, it engages that button that's actually on the circuit board itself. And the other thing I see is the selector switch here is independent too, which is different than other ones I've seen, because it has, you basically have the selector switch itself, which is just a piece of plastic, and then the selector switch is again part of the circuit board assembly. So both these units on my particular deal, the selector switch and the push button switch, are independent of the circuit board here. Another thing I've noticed as well is that on some other units, the zeroing modules here, and there's actually 4 altogether, the zeroing modules here are threaded, and they are threaded into this plastic case. This particular unit looks like it might be like more of a 2-piece design, so you've got this outside shell and then of course the button itself, and it goes together. But the ones that are threaded, it seems like those are all epoxied or potted, I guess if you want to call it that, whereas this has nothing on there. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the extra measure here, and we'll go ahead and put some epoxy on all those zero modules. The first thing I'm going to do though is take this push button off so I can get in here a little easier. It looks to be, yep, 1.5 milli. Dude pops off as one little piece, so that's cool. I don't think I'm going to go under any more disassembly at this point. I mean, I really only have two other parts here, which is the plug switch and the selector switch, but I'm not really quite sure how to remove that selector switch, and I don't really feel like messing with it. I'm just going to leave it be, and I now have enough room to apply epoxy again onto those zeroing modules there. Stuff I'm going to use here, it's called the right stuff, made by Permatex, and this is basically silicone if silicone was on steroids, and that's also why it's like 3 to 4 times the price. A tube like this will cost you about 20 bucks, so it ain't fucking cheap by any means. I don't want to call it a permanent solution, but it's damn near close, right? So if I had to get this thing back open again, I'll be able to, but I will be fighting pretty hard to do it. Alright, I got an alcohol wipe and a Q-tip, and I'm just going to use that to prep those surfaces. And we'll be laying down that right stuff. You can actually notice there is a little bit of grease on those zeroing modules. So just be cognizant of that. Alright. I got a little coffee stirrer, just used to kind of smooth that all out. Make sure it's evenly applied in there. Alright, I was very careful to not get it on the PCB, and I was trying as much as I could not get it on the actual zeroing, the outside of that zeroing module there, which is how you adjust it. When you turn that screw, of course, it goes in and out, so I'm just going back and cleaning up any of that shit that I may have gotten on there, because I did get a little bit, because I'm always get overzealous with shit. Just come in here and clean up that shit. Alright, there you go, my little right stuff potting job. Not the prettiest in the world, but good enough for government work. So it's going to take about an hour and a half for that to cure, so in the meantime I'm going to go ahead and take this guy, I'll shave it down for see if that'll increase the performance. So that's interesting, watch this thing. So Illuminator, turn it, oh guy comes out. See your little lens there. Now from what I understand, if you're willing to shave about, I don't know, about maybe a 1/16 or so off of this, you can actually get a much wider beam pattern out of the Illuminator, because this, by doing so, it'll allow you to basically tighten this down even further, so that this inner lens and outer lens, they get closer together. So I'm gonna go and take this guy, and you gotta be careful obviously because there's a little tiny lens in there. But we're going to go ahead and just shave a little bit off of this dude and come back to it. Alright, here's that little lens piece. I've got it taped off with about a 1/16 exposed. I shoved some lens tissue paper in there just to try to keep any of that metal dust out. I'm just going to chuck it up here in my vise. I got these little plastic clamps which help from marring things up like this, and normally my impatient ass would use something like a 3-inch roll lock on a 90-degree grinder. But of course I left it on my last job site, so we're going to be using Mr. Hand File. So I'll just chuck it up in there and get to filing. Alright, we got that knocked down. Now we use a little fine tooth file to finish it off. Alright, there it is. Nice and filed down. And I improperly said earlier that I thought this was plastic. No, this is a piece of aluminum here. So it is soft and files down pretty easy with even with a hand file. So earlier I mentioned how I ended up stripping out the tops of some of these case screws. So I went to Fastenal, and the only thing they had were these guys, which are the same type of Allen cap screw, same threads, but obviously much longer. This little dude came out about to a 5/16 in thread length, so I'm going to cut these guys down to use as replacements. There's 100 different ways you can cut these threads, but I'm just going to use some small bolt cutters here, and I'm just going to file down the rest. Alright, I got my screw cut down to length, got it in the vise. I'm just going to file down the sharp edges on the end, just get it down to length. And there you go. Go ahead and take some compressed air and blow all that out. And I did shove a lens cleaning cloth down into this hole earlier to clean the lens. But as far as install goes, you have this guy back all the way out as much as it'll go. It'll get to a point where it just will completely spin right. You can take this guy and you can see how it's shaped and how it needs to line up in this lens cavity here. And then you just put it in there until it basically falls down in there, and you'll feel it fall. Right. And then from there, all you gotta do is basically tighten the dude up. And that's it. And go ahead and reassemble this whole guy here. Now, as you can see, the holes on these guys, they're not equally spaced, so there's basically one way it's got to go. There. Alright, that guy is back together now. So coming back to this front cover here, you've got 3 screws that hold it in, and here are the 3 holes on the front housing. And again, I fucked up here, so get my wires out of the way, but you can see I'm definitely missed the mark on that guy. You can see it from the front side too. So what I'm going to do is just put some Scotch tape on this back side. And then we're going to use this JB Weld plastic bonder and fill that guy up, and hopefully it'll do a pretty good job. First thing I'll do is clean that hole out. Ooh, kind of busted a nut there a little bit. Damn cap was on pretty tight too. I have some of that freaking hardener drying on there. Okay, there you go. Certainly looks like someone jizzed in my optic there, but it's supposed to take about 15 minutes to harden, so I'm going to put this in the vise just to keep it upright, and we'll let it set up and dry, come back to it. This PCB is potted. It does have a clear rubbery epoxy on there, and I don't know, you can kind of see the shine of it from the camera. These contacts are not covered here. This here for the ribbon cable to the selector switch, that whole plug-in is not. Of course, these two plug-ins are not covered as well, and looks like for the most part most of this board is covered, the exception being this area, and this area down here. So we're going to go ahead and recoat that. We're actually going to do both sides of it, but first we're going to do one side. We'll start with this side here, which faces down, or rather I should say up towards the top of this unit. And the stuff we'll be using today is this Star Bright liquid electrical tape. And I'll tell you a fun story about this shit. I'm a Lowe's guy as far as when it comes to the Lowe's Home Depot fight. I would have got this shit at Lowe's, but they didn't have black. They only had colors, right? So I go on the Home Depot website, says they got it in stock, says they got it in black, get to the fucking store. What do they have? Not fucking black. So, what did I get? I got green instead, and my options are white, red, and this green here, and I figured, well, the circuit board's already green, white would look whack, red would be too much, I believe. So anyways, that's the shit we're going to use today to repot this. You'll notice that there is an LED right there, so we'll be very careful not to, put that liquid tape on that particular one. And I am going to go ahead and plug in the laser and illuminator, because I do want to pot those connections once they're plugged in as well. I think the first thing I want to do is go ahead and put this button back together here. You'll notice that there is a plastic translucent disc that fits on the back side. Try not to drop it, because it's really fucking hard to find when you do. Ask me how I know. Alright, let's see. I know that the letters are facing towards the laser, so it should be this way. Drop that guy in there. Beautiful. Alright, the push button switch is back on, and as you can see there is a little circuit board right there, and these two white wires are soldered right to it. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bit of this green electric tape in there. Alright, we'll let that set and dry. It's supposed to dry in 5 minutes. Alright, that's dry. I also put some on the battery ground. Alright, I got everything plugged back in. I just tested it. Everything works just like it did before. So I'm going to go ahead and pot this entire board except for right here. That's where the LED is. So I'll just go and do everything on this board except for the LED. But everything, even these pigtails, these connectors, all of that is going to get covered. Alright, we'll call that coat number 1. I'll come back in about 15 minutes and do a second coat. Alright, let's go for round 2. Alright, we'll probably wait about 30 minutes for this one to fully cure, and then I'll go ahead and reinstall that board onto the housing, and then we'll go ahead and pot the other side. Alright, looks to be all fully cured. Came out pretty decent. And that was 2 coats. I'm going to go ahead and screw this guy back down where it was. Hopefully. Alright, we got the screws tightened down on the PCB. Put the battery compartment back where it needs to go. You'll see it's got these little tabs sticking off of it. Those are going to go down, facing down. And there's a lip on the actual housing, so you'll feel it fall into place there, and it shouldn't move or rock around or anything. This positive battery cable is just, for me, it's just a little too close to comfort to this mounting screw. So I'm going to see if I can't find a way to shield this bare wire. And then as far as attaching it, I considered soldering this, but I was worried about the proper amount of heat I would need to apply to get a good solder, which would probably melt some of this battery casing here. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to shield this part of the wire. I'm just going to go ahead and put the wire back where it was, wrap it around the battery as it was before, and then I'm going to use some Oxguard. It's a dielectric grease that also conducts electricity on it, and I think that will create a pretty good stable connection there, because this wire is held in place by the 2 halves of the case. When you bolt it down, that wire basically just gets pinched in there, so it's just physically pushing onto this battery housing. So I got some pretty thin heat shrink tubing here, and I cut down just a small piece, about 3/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to sleeve that guy right over that bare copper wire as far down over here as I can, and that should be enough. As you can see, that it shouldn't interfere with the case, but it should give me some shielding from that bolt, or from that screw there. Move that guy aside. This guy up a little bit. Get some fire. See, I got my little sleeve of heat shrink tubing on there. And I'm just going to go ahead and cover this guy in electric tape again, or liquid electric tape. Alright, we'll let that dry and come back and do another coat. Round one's dry. Let's go for round number 2. Here's a little tip for you guys. Before you put this back together, take some super glue or some silicone, epoxy, whatever, and just put a little dab on each side of these nuts that are recessed in there. You'll see I got one on the bottom cover as well. The last thing you want is to put this thing back together and have one of these nuts fall out and then have to disassemble and reassemble the entire thing again. Ask me how I know. Now before I get this guy all sealed up, I did want to show my repair here. So what I did was I drilled a hole in a pocket, and now you'll see fits right in there, and I can cover up some of that mess when I silicone seal it at the end. And here's how I did it actually. So this is the bottom cover of the unit, and that's actually the screw that I ended up breaking earlier, that I ended up drilling too much of the head. So I drilled the whole head out, and then I cut it down and just kind of gave it a tip. And I did that so I basically created a center punch for this, so that when I put it together, it marked my center hole in that plastic epoxy. Then from there, I started with the smallest drill bit I had and just worked my way up to a 3/32 hole. I took a 3/16 drill bit and just slowly drilled down, not too far, but just enough to create that outer hole, that outer edge. And then from there, I took the 3/16 end mill and went down about 5/32, so not quite 3/16, just a little under it. You just did it slow, trial and error, and it came out pretty good. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get to putting this guy back together here. And I'm going to use this Right Stuff silicone gasket maker again. I got my nice gray turd laid out over here. Mix it up a little. Alright, I'm just going to start putting it around some of these edges here. I'm intentionally going around those bolt holes because I don't want to get that shit in there. That's enough there. And we're going to go ahead and put that guy back there. And put those 2 bottom screws in. Alcohol wipes just to kind of clean up some of this mess. This shit is messy. Alright, now before I put this final back cover on, I got a battery in here. We're going to test it one more time just to make sure it works. The low and the high. Alright. Once I seal this guy up, I do not want to take this fucker apart. Alright, I ran my perimeter of right stuff here. Now remember that this positive battery cable just basically sits into that groove. I'm going to take my old ass tube of Oxguard here. I've only had that tube for like almost 25 years now. Lasts a lifetime. Don't get this shit mixed up with your silicone because it's the same color. You see, I'm just kind of filling that channel because that damn cable keeps popping up on me. Alright, just a little more silicone on the front side here, the back panel. Now you gotta line those springs up with the zeroing modules here. It'll kind of make sense, you know, if you're doing this in person, but it's gotta kind of line up. See how those machine pieces are angled, and it lines up with the angle of those springs. So I'm gonna kind of go in like this here. So I forgot to film full reassembly of this thing, but basically after I apply the right stuff, you go ahead and pop in those 3 bottom screws, tighten them up, make sure to tighten up that screw as well, go by and check. I went in a circle and tightened them all up, you know, incrementally until they were all pretty snug, and then I just used an alcohol wipe to wipe off all the excess silicone that was on there, and then let it set for 24 hours. Alright, I let this guy sit for 24 hours now, and the right stuff has set up pretty well. Pretty good. Got in all those seams there. Kind of got a little shitty here prying it. Again, I was dumb and didn't realize there was another screw right there. But otherwise it's all nice and dry. Alright, we're going to put this Picatinny rail adapter back on, but I'm going to put a little dab of some blue Loctite in these threads here. Ooh, that's a little more than a dab. Oh well. Alright. Just to make sure these guys ain't going to loosen up on us, you know? Go ahead and put this laser cover back on here. Does it go either way? It goes either way. Just gotta stretch that dude over. Alright, I had left the cap on this guy the entire time, but we're going to do a little upgrade here. I'm going to take this one off. And again, that's just a blackout cap, like it's not a diffuser, it just completely covers the light. And what I've got here is an actual L3 LA5 diffuser, cap, cover, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see, it is a bit smaller than the Somogear cover. And this guy is different type of rubber, but let's see if it'll fit anyways. Alright, I got that thing on there, but it was a pain in the ass, I'll tell you what. This thing does not stretch nearly as much as the Somogear cover on there. And what I ended up doing was taking this cap, which is the cap to my Loctite bottle, and it turned out to be basically the same diameter. And I slid it on over the Illuminator, and that seemed to work. Now one thing I notice is that when I put this guy on here, I'm pretty sure it's touching the lens of the Illuminator on here, because the L3 cap, you can see it's got a part that kind of protrudes out a little bit towards the lens. So who knows, May have to file that down or something. We'll see. Let's go ahead and put the battery cover. Go in here. And let's make sure it still works. Whoop. So after putting the L3 diffuser cap on, I wondered if the stock Somogear blackout cap could be modified to be a diffuser cap. And so I've already taken it apart, but it's really simple compared to the rest of the unit. Alright, so here's the stock cap. It comes apart pretty easy right where this rubber retainer goes into this housing. You'll see it's split and it's glued down the middle, but you can take a small flathead screwdriver and just pry it in to each end and just twist it, and that should just pop off pretty easy from there. And then you'll see that that blackout cap is nothing more than just a black piece of plastic here. So I wondered if maybe we could replace this with something else. So what I've got here, this material, it's actually from a milk carton. You see it's kind of got a textured, opaque design to it. And so what I figure is I just put that guy on there and we would trace it out. And I think because of the thickness of this, you can see that that black plastic piece is about twice as thick. So I may cut out 2 pieces of this. And there is like a flatter side to this material here. Take my skizzers here. Alright, I cut 2 pieces out of that milk carton material, and that is basically about the same thickness as this black plastic piece that was in there. So next I'm going to go ahead and prep those areas where we're going to put silicone down. Got some more of this right stuff mixed up. And I got a small clamp here that I'm going to use just to hold the guy together while it all dries. And make sure to orient this thing the right way. I'm kind of confused, honestly, just looking at it. So let me... You want to make sure that rubber band is sitting in there. I don't know how much of that I caught on camera, but it's just kind of a pain in the ass to try to do it in front of that thing. But there it is, put together. I did get a little bit of silicone on there, my fingers. Just come back, clean this all up a little bit, clamp that bad boy down. Alright, we'll come back to that in about an hour or so. Oh, looky here. Now I got 2. Actually, this is my buddy's Somogear. He got his last year, and this is mine that we've obviously just done all the upgrades on. Now I took his stock blackout cap off and put that modified diffuser on there, and we're going to test these guys side by side just to see if there's any discernible performance difference between the two, especially in regards to these illuminators. So I got my 14 here, and let's go ahead and take it outside. Okay, I'm outside, and that tree line is about 25 yards from this camera. And whatever lighting shows up on the left side will be the stock Somogear, and whatever lighting shows up on the right side will be my upgraded Somogear. And right now I just have it on the regular aiming laser low setting. So that's the stock one. That's mine. They look about the same. Almost exactly the same. Okay, next we'll try the Illuminator setting. And this is with the lens all the way out. Stock one. Upgraded one. It's kind of a little weird thing there. Circular. So, I don't know what's up with that, but otherwise, I don't know. About the same. This is with the Illuminator lens tightened all the way in. They still look about the same. High power aiming laser. That fucker's bright. I don't know, this one looks a little bigger maybe? Hard to say. High power illuminator. This is with it. Again, all the way in. I don't really see a difference on these guys. Pretty bright though, that's for sure. Alright, this is with the lens all the way out. Yeah, I don't see a difference in illuminator performance here. Seems that shaving down that lens assembly didn't do shit. And the dual high power. That's with the lens all the way in. Yeah, fucker's bright. To test the diffuser, I'm in my kid's messy ass playroom, and I thought this would actually be a really good example of how well these things work. In Trashcanistan, when you were raiding people's houses at night, you'd always walk into some type of fucking mess, right? So I thought this would be a pretty good idea of what a realistic situation with using an IR laser or nods may possibly look like if you're entering an unknown room. So this is the stock Somogear, and that is with just the illuminator on. As you can see, it's like basically like shining a flashlight in here. It definitely whites out a lot of shit. Now here's the same illuminator with the homemade diffuser cap on. And as you can see, it basically lights the room up like a lamp instead of like a flashlight. If you look at the device, you can even see it's kind of just like more like a torch almost. I don't know how to describe it, but so if you're using these things indoors, having the diffuser cap makes a very, very big difference. All right, now we're going to try it with my upgraded Somogear with the L3 diffuser cap on it. Yeah, that works pretty good. But does it work that much better than the one I just made myself with a fucking milk carton? Again, here's the homemade one. You decide. It seems like a little grainier, but still perfectly usable. Absolutely. Compare one more time to the legit L3 cap. Yeah, maybe a little less grainy, but I don't know, man.
Maybe I could just save 40 bucks.
So, final thoughts on the Somogear PEQ15. The L3 diffuser cap, a worthy upgrade. Making your own diffuser cap, a worthy upgrade. Shaving down the Illuminator lens didn't seem to make a discernible difference as far as I saw. So, is this thing worth 250 bucks? Well, this is only part one of the video. You're going to have to stick around in a few more weeks to watch part two when we put this thing to the test. The pew torture test, that is. So, as always, friends, like, subscribe, all that bullshit. Got any questions, send them in the comments below. And we'll catch you next time.